signed 17 high school players in this class, which is something we put a ton of emphasis on, building a foundation that made sense for the program. And it was great to see that plan come together. I want to start by thanking our recruiting staff. They just did a fabulous job, tireless work effort through this whole process since we landed really the day before Thanksgiving when all this kind of started. And along with the 17 high school players that we signed, we've also added 8 transfers in the cycle. And so, you put those two together, and I think we've answered a lot of needs that we're looking at going forward immediately. But more importantly, putting the group together that we know we can build on, develop, and provide a future for the program, which we thought we desperately needed to do with this roster. Now, specifically with this class, when you look at the big picture total, right, from the great state of Texas, man, there are countless. I'm sitting here counting 17 from Texas. Okay. And so I'm going to back off a little bit and correct myself when I said that number, right? So it's really from the high school ranks, it's 22 with 17 being from Texas. And so that is a great number for our group, our class. It tells you a lot about what we want to do with the program, which I've said this a lot, right? I think the way you develop a program from the ground level up is through high school football, and what better state to do that in Texas? And this shows that with the 17 kids from the great programs here in our state, 22 overall high school players that joined the transfer group. And I think it gives us a great look at our future. Now, when you look at the group holistically, I think a couple things jumped off. We desperately were in need of adding depth and building for the future up front on both sides, right? And I think the list shows that with our OL and DL. And I think winning football in the trenches is the most important thing, and we will focus on that year in, year out, and that shows up in this recruiting class. And then I think speed. When you look at the athletes that we were able to attract here, the common thread is speed. I think it's important to put players on the field that can run at all levels on both sides. And I think we did a great job of doing that. When you look at this specific February class, right, I think probably the one name I'll mention specifically would be, PJ Creighton, our quarterback signee, right? So he's the lone quarterback that we signed in this year's class. That was a goal to bring one in. We did that. He is really grown up being a 2-sport athlete. For those that remember his dad playing days with the Cowboys, has a tremendous upside because he's been a great 2-sport athlete his whole career. And now that he's decided football is his future, we're incredibly excited and think he's a great fit for what we're going to do offensively. And then I think you look at some of the skilled athletes. We added some guys who could really run in this February class. When you talk about Jordan and Aaron and Colin, they're all track kids. They all competed at a high level on the track as well as football. And holistically, they can do a lot of different things on the football field. So when you watch their film, right, whether they're an offensive player or defensive player, you see them showing up, whether it's on special teams, kick returning, out of the backfield, at receiver, at corner, at quarterback at times. And I think that kind of diversity is exactly what our program needs. And I'm excited to add that to the roster and looking forward to getting them here. And then specifically the transfers, right? When you look at them, the 8 transfers have really started their journey here. They're off and running. We haven't talked much about that group, but we were able to attract a few kids back home. I mean, there's a handful of Texas kids in that transfer group, and I think they mirror the philosophy of the high school recruiting class that we signed, meaning we had to add some quality depth and some players that could come in and compete right away up front on both sides. And we've done that through that transfer windows for both of them. And then when you look at the skill guys that can run, a guy like Aaron Turner, who transfers from Cincinnati, can run, right? Has had really some impactful moments at both UConn and Cincinnati, and we're excited to add him to the roster. And then you look at a guy like Max Walke, who was at Wisconsin, and I'm excited. I'm real excited about who's coming to our program, who's enrolled already, and then what the future holds. And So with that, I'm gonna stop. We'll give you guys a chance to ask me some questions. Um, as always, it's a special group because it is group number one for us, right? This is the first year of our staff getting out there with our really beliefs behind what we want our future to look like. Yeah, so what questions? Yeah, so 17, out of the 22 from Texas, I think it speaks to a couple things. First, the importance of how we believe the state will be for our program. And I said that the very first moment I stood in this place, right? How important Texas high school football would be to our program. And I think that shows up right there. We were a program that kept recruiting high school players. And that didn't just happen because we think, oh, okay, that's what people want to see or hear. We did it because that's where great football players are found. As we evaluated high school talent versus maybe some of the transfer talent that was out there, that was the mark, was the high school talent equal or better than maybe some of the transfers that we were considering at those positions. And so we kept coming back to that high school player is better. That high school player is better. And that, once again, is a testament to the high school player, but also to Texas, right? How they develop their players and how prepared we think they are when they come in. Well, it's the same process we use at every position, right? You look at both avenues, right? Is there somebody in the transfer portal that makes sense for us offensively? And there's a high school. So once you get all that information and you begin to really dissect it, right? PJ kept rising to the top, right? His film kept showing up over and over and over. And at the end of the day, right, he became just the right fit at the right time for our program. And I think the ceiling's so high for him because he has really spent his whole life going from football to baseball, which I love, right? That's close to my own heart. And I think once, he's here and his focus is really on football full time and the development of that, man, it's really hard to tell what he's going to end up being for our program, what it's going to look like down the road. I think there were a couple, right? And I think there are a lot. When you graduate, I think the number was 37. Somewhere in the mid to upper 30s that graduated the program last year, right? That's a huge number. That leaves a lot of gaps. And so I will start by saying I think up front, right? We had to build some depth, and then we had to bring some recruits to the table that we thought could come in and compete right away. Something I tell every recruit. We don't recruit backups. The depth chart takes care of itself. Our job is to bring a roster in that can compete every day. So when we talk about these young men, we think every one of them has a shot to come in and compete right away. The depth chart will take care of itself. But I think up front on both sides was probably one of the biggest concerns. I think, offensively, adding some skilled guys that fit our system, right? Because that's a huge transition offensively from where the program was to where we're going. And I think defensively, adding some depth in the corner room that we thought was going to be important. I think we've been able to do that through both avenues, but really that probably more through the transfer portal, right? When Jared Harper, who's a transfer, right? Marty Porter, who's a transfer from Stanford, right? Those are just a couple of names that we expect to come in and compete in that room. Yeah, so I think we answer the needs a couple different ways, whether it's through that transfer window or through the high school recruiting. Yeah, it does. Yeah, well, I think it's a very flexible evaluation. All right, and for us, we want guys who can run. That slot position, inside receiver, right? we're looking for a lot of the same traits I think a lot of programs are. We want a guy who's good with the football, a guy who's dynamic, can make plays. But they have to be versatile, right? In all offense, those are guys that are very involved in the run game, right? They're very involved in the RPO game. They're very involved in our base passing game. And so that takes a little different skill set. And evaluating that, I think actually gives us some advantages, right? Where a lot of programs are trying to bring in consistently that same type of kid who's in that 4-star, 5-star wide receiver, 6'2" long kid. Everybody wants those. We're no different, right? We're not looking to have 10 of those on our roster because that slot position, which we can get by with a kid that's 5'10", 5'9", 5'10" that can really run and dynamic. I would always equate them to great kick returners, right? They make really dynamic slots in our offense, and some of those guys that jump off. I mentioned Aaron already, turn right, transfers to Cincinnati, doing so many of those things already in his career. And then you look at the high school guys that we were able to attract here, right? Whether it's in that first, like Samaj, or in that first round, and you got Colin, like you got Jordan Clark, all those guys have that capability, right? They have the capability to be a number one receiver out wide. They can come into the slot, and in some cases, they can actually get in the backfield. Our offense is very versatile with personnel, and the ability to move people in and out of the backfield to involve them in different ways is important, and finding those guys is equally as important. Without question, we recruit the scheme. Yeah, I think when you have a plan, right? You set goals, right? You recruit with that plan and those goals in mind, and you bring those recruits here to be successful in that scheme, right? And I think if you start fishing outside of that world, then you're probably going to find yourself very inconsistent, right? And we're not going to live in that world. We know who we are, we know where we're going, and we have a great foundation of what that looks like. And so we certainly recruited that scheme. Well, yeah, Coach K certainly drove the energy and the personnel behind that, and what in his vision we needed to do, right, to get better, to lay a foundation for the future, right? No different than the offensive process we went through. Recruit to the scheme, recruit to what our foundation is going to be, our beliefs are going to be, and then develop those recruits, right, to come here and help us change this program and take it to a different level. The schedule is, we know the week is starting, right? So Monday, I think it's March 3rd, right, is week 1. And we'll knock out the first 7 before our spring break. And then spring break hits, and then we'll come back and finish spring ball. So I'm really excited. That's really close. We're talking, right, 30 weeks away, or really 2.5 weeks away. So that's right around the corner. We're excited for that.
First year, what kind of, it being your first year, what was the process kind of like for this recruiting? How are you settling in? How are things going?
Yeah, I've said this a lot in the last 3 or 4 days. It probably went as well as we could have hoped, right? I'm 60 plus days into this, and like anything else, where we're talking offense, defense, you set a plan together, right? You set your goals, and then you work hard to follow that plan to reach your goals. And that was no different when you talk about when you do in your first 10 days, your first 30 days, your first 60 days. So we followed that. We followed that roadmap. I'm really happy where it's led us. Well, for me, it felt like a sprint race, right? But I think that's what you expect. And I don't think that's really any different in a transition year where you're taking over another program, or you're in-house, right, finishing a recruiting cycle. I think it always feels like a sprint race, no matter where you are or how long you've been there. This felt no different. I purposely kind of pushed off my completing, moving of my house, right? So, I've said I've been a nomad and no house, no car for 60 plus days, right? And so, because of the work I knew that needed to go in to this first 60 days, specifically with the recruiting part. And yeah, I'm really, really happy how it's gone. Well, year one, right? For everyone, you're really laying the foundation for what it's going to look like moving forward, and you're creating the energy behind that. Well, the most important resource behind all those things are people, and the most important people in our program are athletes. And so, attracting the right recruits here, the right people here, imperative. It's the most important thing we do, right? And that means year one, the first opportunity to do that, it becomes incredibly important that we make sure we get the people part of that right, that fit what our vision is, where we're going. And I think that's the exciting thing, right? You're bringing new people into your family, right? You're welcoming new people to this campus, to our community, and they're not just coming here to be, outstanding football players. You're coming here to help change your culture. They're coming here to really get one of the best degrees in the country. They're coming here to make this community better. And those are the people we're looking for. Um, yeah, I think it probably took a little longer than you guys expected. I don't know if it took any longer than I expected. You know, I, I'm, uh, I'm in the mindset that you get it right, you don't rush it. And I think putting the staff together shows that. I think it's a tremendous staff. I could not be happier. And we took our time and that paid off in some cases, right? Now I'll use Wayne Lindenberg as an example. So Wayne is taking the role as assistant head coach in our program, tight end coach. And because of our patience, he was available to us, right? If we'd rush that process and say, okay, day 1 through 5, we're going to hire everybody on staff. Well, that wouldn't have been a possibility for Wayne at that moment in time. Not that I knew Wayne was going to come open for us when he did, his availability, but we got fortunate enough that it did, and Wayne is joining our program from Wake Forest, where he had a great run, and with Dave Clausen, who I have a immense amount of respect for and what he's done with that program. And so to add someone like Wayne, when we were able to add him in January to where we did, it's a home run for us, right? Ty Warren's another example, right? Who joins our defense staff and the defensive line, and kind of the same process. Probably wasn't ready in an available role back in December, but we get to January, right? The process is a lot cleaner and looks clear for someone like him to join our staff. And once again, I think another home run. And so really excited about how that came together. Watching that group now work together, right? Getting ready for spring in all phases of their game. I think once again, it was about finding the right people, no different than recruiting a player. It all starts with finding the right people who share, your values, who love your vision and want to work towards the goals that we're putting forward for the program. Oh yeah, we had 7 early enrollees from the high school ranks, and then most of the transfers, all the transfers I mentioned, all 8 of them are here. Okay, and we will add probably a couple transfers when the spring term is over as we're heading to summer. I can't really talk about those yet. Okay, but so we're talking 8 transfers here already, 7 of the high school early enrollees mid-year. So that's 15 guys on the roster coming in, which we're really excited about. That puts our spring roster right around 100, which is tremendous. If you were to look around the country and you talk about programs that are trying to figure out, can they do spring ball normally? What can we get done? Looking at the rosters, we're not one of those, right? And I give our staff credit for that, how we were able to really maintain the roster in-house, right? Keep the core components here, right? And then build on that, which we thought was really important. You know, day one, I stood in front of the team and said, we want to build a program with you, right? We want to change a culture with you, everyone who's sat in those seats you're sitting in now. And I love the buy-in and I love the excitement that core has established for all these incoming guys now.